Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's unfortunate we couldn't broadcast this live feed yesterday. As I posted on our various platforms, there was some form of technical hitches, so we couldn't broadcast this. But then I'll go straight to our topic for today, since we don't want to waste much time. As we earlier posted, we will be talking about whether vocabulary and then idiomatic expressions are as important in Ielts as possible. Also, the scoring criteria, and then we will also talk about the type of test that is very good for you based on your experience and your expectation, and then the purpose for which you are taking the test. It is very important that we understand these simple things. It is very important that we get to know what goes on or certain details about the test before we start writing the test. So in the first place, we'll start talking about the importance of vocabulary in IELTS and PTE. As we already understand, English language is all about words and how you put them together, how you mix up those words, how you play with them. And then because this test is actually trying to try to assess 4 of your main skills in English language, which is reading, listening, speaking, and writing, you will always have to spice your information and then the ideas that you provide. You write, you say, and then the ideas that you put across anytime you are writing the test. You spice it up a little bit with vocabulary and expressions. Some idiomatic expressions are very, very important because sometimes it makes your English language looks much matured, and it makes it feel or seem like you are an expert user because you have diverse of vocabulary whenever you are writing the test. So vocabularies such as synonyms is very important. It is not always, especially in the writing test, it is not always important, it is not always the case that you use one word throughout. Most of the times you have to mix it up with your synonyms, and then sometimes instead of talking about negativity to a particular word, you can also talk about the antonym of the word. When I say synonym and antonyms, I'm referring to the opposite in meaning and the nearest in meaning, respectively. Therefore, if, for instance, you are taking the writing test and then you are expected to describe something, or even in the speaking test or other aspect of the test, and you are expected to describe something in a context. For instance, if you want to say it is raining heavily, instead of just going straight ahead and say it's raining heavily, you can simply put it in an idiomatic expression. Say it is raining cats and dogs. This is something that proves that you have a diverse understanding of the English language, and then you have an open mind when it comes to description or when it comes to playing around with the words in your English. Now, also, there are certain expressions that describes a particular word, and then there are certain statements, whether a phrase or a statement, that describes a particular word. So it is also very important that all the time, whenever you have or whenever you take part in the writing text or the speaking test, or even when you are engaged in the reading test, you have to put all these things together, all these words together, and then you make it look like you have a different or diverse understanding of the English language. Because, for instance, if I'm having a conversation with you as I am having now, and I always use a particular word continuously, it proves that, or it shows that my understanding of the English language is limited. It also draws the idea that I have a particular direction of understanding for the English language. Now, because we are testing 4 different skills in your English language, or in your experience or expertise in the language, you have to mix it up with so many things. And then mixing it up with so many things is by implanting in your vocabularies and then your idiomatic expression. Now, one most important thing that we are supposed to know is how the criteria for scoring. For instance, if we are to describe something about, for instance, I say ourselves, now the examiners will always look for certain parallel ideas. So in the first paragraph, for instance, if you are writing, in the first paragraph, your idea that you express in the first paragraph should pair with the idea that you express in the second paragraph. This is somehow proving to whoever is reading or whoever is listening that you have a diverse understanding of the language. Now, the most important thing is that always try as much as possible to spell correctly, because English is all about correct spelling. So if you are writing, especially in the other 3 aspects aside the speaking, if you are writing or you are answering questions on the reading and then listening and speaking, and the writing, you have to make sure whatever answer that you put down provides a level of correct spelling and maturity in that word. Now, the criteria for scoring depends on the amount of vocabulary that you express. It also depends on how parallel your ideas are. Now, let me explain that. If we say ideas are parallel. Now, if I am describing a car key in this context, I have to make sure that whoever begins to read the first sentence in the first paragraph will have an idea of what I am talking about, even before I show the key to the person. So my description should be explained, or should highlight the object that I am explaining or I am describing. Therefore, whatever that I talk about should be parallel in such a way that the first sentence or the first paragraph describes the idea in the subsequent paragraphs. So I talk about a key has a holder, or an object that is used to open doors, or that is used to start up machines. If I start in that case, then whoever will read, will understand and know that what I am describing is definitely a key. Or if I am supposed to describe a chair, the first sentence that I put down should be something that will give the person who is reading the picture of what I am going to describe. That is paralleling your ideas. So in that case, it gives the examiner an idea that, whoever is writing this test has a diverse knowledge in words. So you have to just play along with the words. You have to just play with the words. Your words should be able to turn around. Your words should be able to travel from one place to another, especially in the ideas that you are describing. All drawing down to the fact that this thing that you are talking about can be understood and then can be pictured in the minds of the reader what the object is. But one important thing that we should also understand is that when you are scoring, it doesn't matter how fast you speak, or when they are scoring, it doesn't matter how fast you speak or how clear your handwriting is, but how clear your ideas are. So it is always important that we turn out to become very attentive when it comes to the listening test. We focus on the passage that is being given to us, the topic that is being given to us for us to discuss when it comes to the reading test. So the most important thing in Ielts is to get a band score that will give you the scholarship or the travel opportunity that you are looking for. But all the time, we have to make sure we try to draw out or pour out our ideas, whether in writing or in speaking, in such a way that it will provide a diverse of understanding to whoever is listening or whoever is reading the text. As I said, if we want to get a bound score of say 8.0 in a particular test, whether speaking, listening, reading, or writing, then we must understand that vocabulary and idiomatic expression will play a very important part or a major part in what we will do. And then also make sure you always understand what you are putting down or what you are saying or the ideas that you are passing across. So it gets you confused, especially if you don't understand a particular word that you are talking about. So if I start by saying I have this and this and that, I am this and this and that, and I keep describing something and then begin to bring in words that I might have heard somewhere but I didn't take time to understand, you will get lost along the line, because anytime that you don't understand a word and you use it, it provides a different context which is contrary to the idea that you are trying to put across. So always, all the time, try as much as possible that any word, any expression, any phrase, any sentence, any vocabulary that you put in your statements, you put in your writing, you put in your speech, you have 100% understanding of the word. Because if you don't understand the word, your context of description will be totally different from what you are actually talking about. That is very important. Now, another thing that I want us to talk about is how the kind of Ielts test that is good for us or that is good for an individual. Now, every time people think that Ielts is just in one form, but there are 3 different tests that you can write. We have the general test, you have the academic test, and then we have the basic life skills. Sometimes people turn out to take part in an academic test, whilst they may have wanted to, or the purpose for which they are writing the academic test is totally different. So let me take time to explain and then provide some information on these 3 types of tests. Now, academic test, as the name depicts, the academic test is used for education purposes. So because it is academic, it is related to education or study abroad. And then the general test is used for vocation, or maybe you want to be part of a professional body, or you want to migrate yourself and your family to a particular country. But the basic life skills is not for those who take part in the general test and then the academic test. The basic life skills is mostly for people who only want to move to join their spouses. And then sometimes, especially in UK and other European countries, they conduct the life skills, basic life skills, for those who apply for, say, a passport, a British passport, a German passport, or whatever passport that they are looking for. So basic life skills is only just a small expression of how you understand the language. So you don't go through a lot of ideas or a lot of stress when you are writing the basic life skills. And then the ideas that you express in the basic life skills, they only just want to know how you understand the language or how you speak. So in the basic life skills, there are 2 aspects. We have the speaking and listening. And mostly the basic life skills the test is taken by 2 people, including and then the examiner as well. So there are 3 people including the examiner. So all the time, if you register for the basic life skill, you together with another candidate will face the examiner, and then the only thing that you will be doing is to be talking to yourself and then be listening to a particular audio and answering questions on them, but you will not write anything. Unlike the general and the academic, where we have 4 main aspects, but the basic life skills we have 2 aspects. So you just have to sit down with another candidate, and then the examiner will be some like a referee to what you'll be doing. So you'll be provided with a topic, so discuss. So maybe candidate A will ask candidate B about his or her neighbor, and then candidate B will also explain what will also talk about the topic that's given to him or her, and then later the other candidate will have chance to ask questions. So after that, you will be given an audio to listen, and then you will answer the questions based on the audio that is given to you. You see, the format of the test is different from the academic and then the general. Unlike the academic, where you are supposed to sit down for say 2 hours or less to answer questions on speaking, listening, and then reading, and then at the end of the day, you also face someone in a one-on-one interview. Then you talk to the person, you answer questions on that. There are 2 different things. So if you want to travel to study, you should know which type of test that you should write. If you want to travel just to work, you also have to know the type of test that you write. And if you just want to, sometimes it is also a requirement by the body that is taking part of, or that is taking care of what you are doing. Say if you want to travel to study, the school which you apply will define what you will do. And then if you are going for a job or you want to work abroad, the institution or the company or the organization that is employing you will also define the type of test that you write. And then mostly if you are applying to join your spouse or you are applying to do something else, that will also be defined in the requirement. So these are the 3 main parts. These are the 3 main types of IELTS tests that you can be part of. The first one is academic, where you sit and write you sit and write reading, writing, and then listening. And then you have the general test, which will do the same. But in the academic and then the general, you will still meet someone, an examiner, in a one-on-one interview for the person to measure your speaking skills. But then with the life skills, with the basic life skills test, you will not write anything. So mostly you don't even need, the only thing that you will be writing is that the examiner can give you an option to write down or state down your ideas and the questions that you might want to ask the other candidates. As I said, 2 people are involved, including a candidate from somewhere, and then the examiner will be the referee. So the only thing that you will write is your ideas and the questions you want to ask the other candidate. So most of the times when you are going to the basic life skills test, if you are writing the basic life skills, you don't need to take anything along. You only have to go there with your ideas put across, and then with your questions ready, and you ask the other candidate for the person to understand and for you to also understand the person. Now, one other thing is that there are certain things that we should know, especially when we want to take any of the tests. Sometimes we have to get ourselves familiar with certain things that we do in our daily lives, and then we also have to get ourselves familiar with certain issues, and then certain topical things that at least we are not. Sometimes we are not too familiar, but then we have to be able to understand them. So when it comes to the general test and then the academic test, now the speaking test has 3 parts, as we already know, but the third part and then the second, you'll be given a topic. So most of the times I advise that whatever that you want to do, you have to, as much as possible, familiarize yourself with certain things. So certain topics that are mostly discussed are school, especially with the academic test. We talk about school, university, college, and other things. Now, when it comes to the general test, we talk about your work, your profession, and other basic things that you will need. Now, one other thing that you should know is anytime you are asked to describe something that you are not familiar with. For instance, I'm not a sports person, so if you ask me to describe football, it will be hard for me. Though I have heard, or back in the days I used to play, though I have heard all of that, I've occasionally watched some, but I'm not too, I don't have too much idea about soccer. So if I am asked to talk about it, then the ideas that I have to put across, I have to talk about it in such a way that everyone who is listening to me will feel that I am a professional footballer. Now, you can only do this by the small ideas that you know about football, things that you have watched, things that you have heard from people, not necessarily you being part of it. So some of the topical things that mostly the speaking test seeks to talk about is with the academic test. They talk about school, they talk about your profession if you are working, they talk about things that you want to do in a particular defined number of years. They talk about technology. They talk about societal problems such as flooding, such as conflicts, and then all of that. So these are the basic things that we have to have enough ideas about before we start the test. Now, if you don't have any idea about it, even when you've not heard of it before, but then at least you have some little bits of ideas about that particular thing, then that skill of describing something in such a way people will get to have the idea in your first paragraph of description. That is what you have to adopt. Now, as I said, if I am describing a camera, I have to describe the camera or talk about the camera in my first sentence such that whoever reads it or whoever listens to it will know that this person is going to talk about a camera. Now, another topical issues that they normally ask in the general test has to do with your vocation, especially with your profession, and then family, and then interests, and all of that. So sometimes you have about 2 minutes to talk about something that you don't actually have enough idea about. So for instance, if you are living in an isolated place, you don't have any neighbor around, but then you'll be asked to talk about your neighbor. You have not even actually had a neighbor before, but then you should talk about it in such a way that whoever is listening or reading will know what you're talking about. Now, one other thing is that if, for instance, in the academic test, when you are asked to describe, especially in the speaking test, when you are asked to describe what you want to be or how you see yourself in about 5 years' time. Now, sometimes it is not, the question doesn't actually require what is in your head. The question actually requires your ability to express your ideas in sentences. So you don't have to pour all your dreams and aspirations onto the examiner, no. But as I earlier stated in my submission, everything that you say should be parallel. So you start from somewhere, and then the first statement that you make should reflect in your previous and subsequent ones. So in your first statement or your first paragraph of describing what you want to do or where you want to be in future, it has to reflect in your subsequent ones. So basically, these are the simple topical issues that they ask about. But one thing that we should know, one thing that we have to always take care of is our vocabulary and our idiomatic expression. And then when it is writing, listening, or reading, we have to also look at and pay much attention to our spelling, because if you spell it wrongly, it can mean something else. So, for instance, if you are spelling suit and if you spell it as SUIT, that is a different word. And then if you add E to the suit that you have already spelled, it also gives a different meaning to what you have said, or what you have written, or what you will say. So whatever that you are writing, you make sure you spell correctly. That is very important. And then if you, as I said, if you don't understand the word, don't worry using it. You can speak simple English language by adding some level of idiomatic expression. You can speak simple English language by adding some form of synonym to the simple words that you use. You don't have to use complicated and complex words to prove that you understand English, to prove that you can speak English, to prove that you can write English, and to prove that you can communicate in English. Simple words are very important. That is what I want us to put our notes today. So I would want to end here, since time has already been fast spent. But next 2 weeks, same time, 4 p.m., we will also do a similar live session with you, and we come up with topical ideas and issues that we will also be discussing in our next session. So check out our Facebook, as we always put and update our readers and our subscribers on Ielts and then PTE on Archilinks on all social media platforms. And then you can also visit our offices in Accra and Kumasi. So thank you very much for your time, and then we'll come your way same time next 2 weeks. You have so much fun with the English language. So until then, make sure you spell right, you speak right, you write right, and then you read right. Thank you, and have a wonderful week.